So I've been trying to get across a very specific point in my research into astrology and into ancient culture. And this is something that most astrologers who are just mainly interested in reading charts and divination this is probably going to go over their heads. I hope that I'm counting on the fact that there are people who are going to be interested in a deeper exposition of ancient thought and esotericism and the occult, because astrology is the oldest science that we basically have. A lot of the pharmacology of the ancient world has been largely lost. There's some people who are reviving or translating a lot of Galen's works, which is interesting. But astrology is something that we have a lot of writings about it from the Hellenistic era and beyond, way beyond that, into going way into present day. We have people writing about astrology. So what I am trying to get across is the idea that astrology is based in a cult of fertility. There's a very basic idea of how the cosmos works that it underlies astrology. And this is the basic idea that there is a sky god and an earth goddess. And these two, this is a dualistic model of reality. You can see it. I've talked about the doctrine of sect previously, which is it divides the planets into the planets of the night, which are the moon and Mars and Venus, and the planets of the day, which are the sun and Jupiter and Saturn. And within these two realms, the masculine realm and the feminine realm, there is a clear flow model of energy and life and death and rebirth, which is death and rebirth is the probably the driving topic of ancient people, like why and how are plants, the agricultural world, how does this happen? How do things seemingly die off and then are reborn in from a root or from a seed? This is all stuff that's right on the surface of a lot of mythology and a lot of cultic teachings that there's too many to go into. But the basic esoteric fact is that the sublunar realm that we are in is the realm of the goddess. This is an esoteric fact according to ancient people, a fact that was exploited, a fact that is reflected in the images and the archetypes and the imagos that come to us from ancient people. And I'm basically, without getting into the astrological flow model too much, there's three imagos or archetypes that appear for masculinity in this subjugated form. And I use this term not as this is not a victimhood kind of thing. This is simply trying to describe how this the masculine spark essentially fits into this esoteric world. There's a lot of people's work, like Michael Tsarian's work, describes a lot of this in really great detail from the the viewpoint of the terrible mother versus the dragon mother. However, what I'm interested in here is specifically the imagos, that the images, the archetypes that these are sort of like ruts or psychological patterning that have been used to describe and replicate this this type of subservience of the male spark. So again, this is I'm not advocating that these things be replicated. In fact, what I'm trying to do here is to point out these things so that we can attempt to transcend these things. Not that we necessarily completely can, but we need to understand which of these ruts we're going into. So the three archetypes that I would point to are the hedonist. This is the Dionysian male. This is the oversexed, the male who is basically has subjugated himself to the feminine through sexual desire and through inebriation, and everything pointing back to this basic urge, essentially, that they cannot escape from. And this is extremely well documented, this this archetype. Again, this is Bacchus, this is Dionysus, this is generally a somewhat effeminate male archetype. It can be like an Adonis, it can be one who's got this sort of solar attraction, but it's often an archetype that's accompanied by the centaur or the satyr, which is the symbolic male who is captured in the lower realm of desire. The next of these imagos or archetypes is the ascetic. The ascetic is, in fact, the flip side of the hedonist. This is the there's just a flow model basically between these two. This is the male who is has renounced sexuality. It's often coming from a place where there's just been too much of that, where a person has realized that they've been captured into this world of extreme hedonism, and it's a reaction essentially to that. This ascetic goes as far as moving towards the castration area, where you have this denial of the physical world. The person who's so satiated that they come out the other end into a place where they've decided that the whole realm is evil, and you can only basically escape it through asceticism. And this is extremely Gnostic kind of place it's a logical next step, essentially. These things go together. The castration ritual was actually a significant part of some ancient initiatory rites, where a male would have completed, already had children, and then essentially moved to the next level, where they would castrate themselves as a symbolic move towards this towards the goddess. But this is a very fraught area here. This gets into a lot of homoerotic and stuff that's hard to talk about in modern the way modern people think, and for good reason. This gets into some very dark places, and I could point to mythology of Ganymede and Zeus if you want to look that up. That's Ganymede, Ganymede, and Zeus. That's sort of a parasitic relationship there, and that is in the stars. In the water bearer is in fact Ganymede from mythology. So these two archetypes are closely linked together. Now the third one is one that sits with the astrological Mars, and the Mars archetype is the basis of the masculine world. The Mars archetype is the soldier archetype. Now this is a very dangerous archetype for the goddess. Basically, this is an archetype that in astrology we have the what I've called the Sun King archetype, which is the fusion of the solar and the martial, which is reflected in the Aries sign of Aries in its rulership and its exaltation. This time of year, which is near the equinox, is the time of the rising of the Dionysian or Bacchic god Osiris. And it's very important to note that, like the Templars, several of the monastic military orders that came after the rise of the Abrahamic sort of Gnostic way of being that went around the world and basically decimated more balanced cultures. This martial archetype was actually a castrated male soldier archetype, where you're bringing together an ascetic version of a soldier who is the wounded king, the fisher king, these things point directly back to the Attis character from the cult of Cybele and Attis. Again, if you're not familiar with that, you should look that up. There's a tons of, if you just go to a search engine, go to Grokpedia or preferably not Wikipedia, you'll find a great deal of information about that. So again, my point here is to try and investigate and document the ways in which this already subservient force within the realm of the goddess, which is the sublunar realm, which is where we are, the ways in which the masculine archetype is essentially put into service. There is a wisdom and a need, in fact, in many ways, to put the masculine spark, which I identify as the libido, which, if you look up the definition of libido, it actually splits this life force, the drive to life, essentially, is what libido is. It's split by definition in the psychoanalytical definition into the sexual urge and the principle of the desire to defend oneself, to preserve oneself. And if you look, as I said, at this this trifurcation, essentially, of the martial, you get mythically, you'll actually get the stories of Mars as the soldier. You'll get the story of Zeus, basically, who cryptically is linked directly to Dionysus. He was the father of Dionysus, of Zagreus, the baby Dionysus. And the mythology around Zeus is one of being protected by the goddess. He was born, and all of his siblings were eaten by Saturn, and he, of course, was kept alive underground with a wet nurse while Saturn came around and looked for him, and he was protected basically by a martial order too, which is the Coratus, and I could be wrong with the pronunciation on that. There was a martial order that was used by the goddess in order to drum and dance and shake their spears when Saturn would come looking for the baby Zeus underground. And then the birth of the baby Zagreus is another extremely similar myth in a lot of ways, except for he was gestated within the born to mortal Persephone or Semele, and then gestated within the thigh of Zeus. So a second birth unto the father, which gets you again. That starts with a sort of a homoerotic man coming from man, sort of parthenogenic kind of idea, and it. Yeah, that gets a little confusing to people, but that's the whole context is the goddess. So this, you get into a lot of androgyny and confusion around this. The emergence of Athena from Zeus's head. It's another idea that's sort of a power play here between these two realms. So the third imago or archetype is the Saturn archetype, which is again the castrating archetype, the ascetic archetype, which basically renounces the material world, again in the name of the goddess. Saturn castrated Uranus in the name of as a proxy to the goddess. Saturn and Attis are correlate to each other very neatly in mythological, functional mythology. Essentially, the lover, the sun lover of the goddess, and that brings actually us full circle within this this masculine, the solar world, where the you have the flow from the Mars archetype, which is all about rebirth and asserting oneself within the realm of the goddess. And then basically it's a it's a story of co-optation and subservience within that. So what does that mean for us? It's like this is a it's a cautionary tale in many ways that was handed to us not necessarily to be that. That wasn't necessarily their intention, but it clearly is what it is. And the function of the male as the protector of an orderly and civilized realm, essentially, which is what the solar realm is supposed to provide. It is supposed to provide an orderly and safe place, like a chalice, actually, for the feminine to be able to thrive. We, in many ways, have been hobbled by our conception that, which I think is pretty universal, that the ancient world was barbarous under the lecherous and power-hungry masculine archetypes that ruled, like robber barons or something like that. You know, that we had a civilizing force of femininity that basically contains the masculine destructive urge, which is this is the anti-patriarchal concept that we're like frogs boiling in this anti-patriarchal, anti-colonial kind of water. That's our current culture that is very, we see more and more people breaking through that idea, but that's still where we're at, and it's my point here too is that's nothing new. This is very, very old, and it's this flow model also works in that the masculine world only operates through practical effort, the martial effort, the organizing and civilizing force that Mars can be, which again is split into this the hedonistic and the ascetic sides of the same coin. So you'll get a lot of demonization, essentially, of the soldier archetype within people who are freedom-oriented people, the order follower, all of these, basically well-meaning but denigrating ideas about the soldier. This is, the impulse to protect, the impulse to civilize and create a container for all the good things that civilization brings. We need to be very careful when we demonize this archetype. Some people I think do a fair job of trying to make the delineation there in a way that's intelligent, but that's not what I see often. There's just a and it comes often, I believe, from males who are more captured by the hedonistic, just let me alone and let me smoke my herb, and kind of, that sort of male, I just want to get left alone, and why, there should be no government, it's all corrupt and all of this. That the world just won't respond well to that. There are structures, and there is a fantastic amount of pressure being exerted upon the very fragile infrastructure of civilization, and by that I mean also economy that is not completely controlled by people who don't have our best interests, who are interested in creating a new type of feudalism, essentially. We have to be really careful we don't play into their hands, essentially. So I'm hoping this is a very long video, and I hope that people have the time and the willingness to explore these things with me. So I'm at michaelmsuter.com, and my Substack is DAIM, Daimon Seed Astrology, which is of course a play on Demon Seed, which is a whole different matter. But that's what it is if you want to reach me. Thanks.